So again, welcome. This is Literally Alive. My name is Marika. I'm going to be your host this evening. We're going to have so much fun and talk about and listen to some wonderful poetry and engage with issues surrounding the climate change. We'll be starting shortly. We're just waiting for a few more participants. But again, feel free to join us in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. I see we have a participant from Charleston, South Carolina, Norway, Maine. I'm joining you here from South Portland, Maine.
From Gorham, Maine for Sophia.
Excellent, yay. Welcome, Gorham, Maine, Belfast, Pittsfield, Vermont. One of the bright sides I found around this pandemic is all of these programs moving online, and we're able to share a digital space with so many more people than we maybe would have with place-based things. So I'm so excited for those of you who are coming from afar and joining us here. So welcome.
Want to say hi, Jim?
Hi.
Hi, Jim.
Hey. Hey, Charlotte, where are you?
So for those of you just joining us, my name is Marika. I'm going to be your host for this evening. We will be asking you to eventually, well, we would love for you to mute yourself unless you're a reader this evening. And eventually we're going to be asking you to turn off your video once we get our program officially underway, just so that we can stream this more easily for those who might not have the strongest broadband connection. So if you need help figuring that out, if you're on an iPad and you tap the screen on the left side of your screen, there's a video camera. You just want to click that and it'll turn your video off. And for mute, it's the same thing. It's either hover over on a desktop computer or a laptop, hover over the faces or the face that you see speaking, and that's where your mute button is as well as a little microphone icon. So we'll give everyone a chance to do that.
Okay, I'll do
that. Excellent. Let me just make sure that all of our readers are here. Excellent. Great. Well, it's 7:04, and I think that we should get started since I am in this position of power. So, welcome to all. And good evening, and welcome to Literally Alive, a series that features writers from the canon of Littoral Books. Again, my name is Marika von der Steenhoven, and I'm a friend of Littoral Books, as well as a special collections librarian, and I am delighted to facilitate this evening's program. I believe that this is our 5th reading, although I could be off because I'm not sure what time it is anymore, and it has been such an honor and inspirational to be in this position of hosting these events. So thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, we're celebrating the 2019 Littoral Books publication, A Dangerous New World, Maine Voices on the Climate Crisis. We're joined tonight by 8 poets featured in the book: Kathleen Sullivan, who is also a co-editor of the work, Ginny Freeman, Sophia Berry, Erin Covey-Smith, Analyses, Lucia Owen, Charlotte Agell, and Martin Steingesser. For those who are new to our program, Littoral Books is an independent press based in Portland, Maine, committed to publishing beautiful books in a variety of genres by writers and artists from Maine and New England. Founded in 1975 by members of the Portland Women's Group for the express purpose of publishing the work of women writers, Littoral Books was one of the founding presses of the Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance. The press went into hibernation in 1976, but 42 years later, in 2018, it renewed publication with Agnes Buchel's novel, The House on Perry Street. Its 6th and most recent book is Catherine Hagopian Berry's poetry collection, Mast Year, and in September of this year, Littoral Books will publish Kate Kennedy's memoir, Skin. The Literally Alive series, which again features and highlights writers from the canon of Littoral Books takes place Wednesdays at 7 p.m. And it would behoove you to mark your calendar for the following program. Next week, July 8th, Kathleen Berry will read from her poetry book and perhaps share some new work from Mast Year. I had the honor of interviewing Kate for that publication, an interview that appears with Agnes's keen editing to it. We had a very lovely afternoon spent in my dining room talking about poetry and inspiration and much more. That's featured in her work. And so that will be next Wednesday, July 8th at 7 p.m. And then I believe we have not locked down the date, but I'll share a little teaser with you that Lori Harley, who is the mastermind behind the design of many of Littoral books, she designed the gorgeous cover, I don't want to cover my face, that is on A Dangerous New World. We will be doing a program with her talking about book design, which is something that is near and dear to my heart. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And in fact, to keep up to date on these programs, you can visit Littoral Books website and be sure to sign up for the mailing list. And so right now, I'm going to pop that into the chat. If you have the chat window open, there is a link to the website. Okay. But on to tonight's program. A quick overview of the proceedings of this evening and some housekeeping notes. So again, tonight's discussion is grounded in the Littoral Books publication, A Dangerous New World, Maine Voices on the Climate Change. The publication was edited by Kathleen Sullivan, who is joining us this evening as a reader, and Meghan Sterling, who organized this particular reading this evening. Nancy Heiser was the assistant editor, and Margaret Morfitt was the art director. The book includes a foreword by Governor Janet Mills, and A Dangerous New World, Maine Voices on the Climate Crisis is an anthology of work by 65 writers and 27 artists who responded to a call for essays, poetry, and artwork on the effects of climate change, on their lives, their communities, their families, and their futures. The resulting collection is a many-layered and complex mosaic of voices and visions, of thoughtful appraisals, careful observations, emotional responses, and scientific analyses. We see changes along the coast through the eyes of lobstermen and clammers, changes in the woods through the eyes of forest walkers and birders, images of natural beauty and its devastation through the work of poets, painters, photographers, installation artists, and sculptors. Throughout the book, these writers and artists share their deep sense of the danger that lies ahead and their understanding of what can and must be done to prevent greater disasters to our land, our waters, our air, our forests, and our animals. Environmentalist Bill McKibben says, Maine encompasses all the ecosystems from seafloor to alpine peak that are being scoured by the corrosive force of climate change. And this book is a reminder that people who love these places and communities will not surrender them easily. We have 8 poets featured in the work this evening: Kathleen Sullivan, Ginny Freeman, Sophia Berry, Erin Covey-Smith, Annalise Giacomettis, Lucia Owen, Charlotte Agell, and Martin Steingesser. Each will be doing a brief poetry reading, and then we will engage in a conversation that features your questions. So that was an elaborate and perhaps confusing way of saying that the readers will read, and then we will have a Q&A session at the end. You are welcome to engage with the chat to share your questions throughout the program. Our producer, Robert Diamanti, will be collecting those and ushering them to me. So you can either send him a direct chat, or he's behind the Littoral Books logo, or you can just pop them in the chat to everyone. Our program is slated to run about an hour. We're asking that you all remain muted and with your video off for this program so as to reduce the noise distractions as well as any choppy video feeds. And that, again, has to do with the bandwidth or broadband. So let's see. I've asked you to remain muted and with your video off. We are encouraging you to engage. So at the bottom of the toolbar on the Zoom screen, whether you're on the iPad or the on a computer, there's a reactions feature where you can share an emoji response of either clapping, you can see that in the corner of my screen now, or a thumbs up. And you're welcome to engage with those throughout the program to show your support for a reader or a comment that is made. We have the chat turned on, as I've referenced to a couple of times. There's a link right now to the book on Littoral Books website. You are welcome to engage with it. I've loved seeing where so many people that are joining us this evening are from, but you also don't have to engage with it. If you find it distracting, you are welcome to disable the chat. You can do that by either clicking on the chat icon or putting your screen into full view. So you really have autonomy in how you want to engage in tonight's program. Engage with the chat if you want, or don't if you don't want. Okay, those are my housekeeping notes. So the theme of this evening's program is Maine Poets and the Climate Crisis. As I sit here in my dining room in South Portland, I want to recognize and honor the current tribes who comprise the Wabanaki Confederacy, the Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, Maliseet, and Micmac peoples, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. I respect the traditional values of these tribes and acknowledge their inherent sovereignty in this territory that I occupy. And I think that Indigenous people some of their traditional practices are what we're looking at, right, in terms of thinking about how to occupy this or to be on this land. So what I want to do is share a link with you. The Maine Wabanaki Reach organization is a wonderful place to learn about advocacy and about the Wabanaki Confederacy. So I'm going to pop that link right there in the chat for you to engage with after this evening's program. Let's see. It's very clear I'm not a technologist. There it is in the chat for you. And with that acknowledgement made, and without further ado, let's get into the readings. So our first reader this evening is Kathleen Sullivan, who is the co-editor of this beautiful work. And it is an honor to introduce her. Kathleen lives in Freeport, and she has been published in Poetry Lore, Stone Coast Review, Cafe Review, and a number of anthologies. As I mentioned previously, recently she was the co-editor of this gorgeous book, A Dangerous New World, Maine Voices on the Climate Change. So without further ado, Kathleen, if you want to unmute yourself, welcome.
Thank you for a lovely introduction, Marieka. That was very nice. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Just a pleasure. The first thing I just want to read a small piece from the introduction because it sets the tone for the work that we did. We said that we had no idea if this anthology would end up a work of great despair. We had no idea what, if anything, the artist would call upon for strength. In The Future of Ice, Gretel Ehrlich's personal book about a world without winter, she concludes by saying, "Beauty saves me." In this collection of poems and essays and visual art that you have in your hands, that you're going to hear about tonight, beauty plays a role. But what we found to be even more stronger than beauty is love. Love for this cold country of the pointed firs, for its children, for its lovable future. So, devoted to love for everything we love about this state and this planet, here's the poem that actually precipitated Meghan to say, after I read it at another Littoral Books reading, she said, we should do an anthology after I finished reading this. And here it is. So it's called Noah's Ark Redux. Will there be time to bid farewell, one by one, each by each, to kiss the green hummingbird on her veined iridescent wings, to stroke the cold trout's neon body, to hold the dying frog in our open palm, fold the white-spotted fawn into our arms, plead with the thrush to trill one final note into the cathedral of the slowly browning forest. Oh, holy bardic grief, sweet consolation for the blind assassin. Let us instead cheer for the bear to refuse our faithless hug and the thrush to refuse the operatic ploy, and the rabbits to refuse our fairy tales, and the foxes to scream their terrible screams in the night. Will we, even so, scold the rising tide, denounce the fire, decry the plants for their audacity to die, bargain, haggle, rage for breath, for water, for time? When the floods come, and they will come, what will we use to build our ark? The stash of plastic floating in the dead ocean, the brown pelts of seals, the bleached bones of animals.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. That was Kathleen Sullivan reading a poem from A Dangerous New World. And thank you so much for sharing a piece from the introduction. As I was reviewing and looking and rereading parts of the book today, I was thinking of cribbing some notes from there, but I'm so glad that we got to hear that in your voice. So thank you. And thank you for grounding our program this evening in love. I appreciate that. So if you've just joined us, this is Literally Alive. My name is Marika, and I'm your host for this evening, where we are engaging with 8 different poets whose work was featured in A Dangerous New World, Maine Voices on the Climate Change. Here's the cover of the book if you haven't seen it. Next up, it's a pleasure to introduce Ginny Freeman, who is our next reader. Ginny Freeman is a Maine native and lives on the mid-coast. Among other works, she is the author of Rack and Ruin, Finding Safe Harbor in a World Cast Adrift, which is a collection of poetry published by the Maine Authors and Publishing Alliance in 2017. Her essay Deep Well was published by the Wilderness Society and Milkweed Press in 2004 in Maine Voices, a celebration of the people of Maine and the places they love. And she has a new book, Skywriter, Poems of Earth, Sea, and Sky, due to be released fall 2020 by Maine Authors Publishing Alliance. I'm going to pop her website into the chat for those of you following along in the chat. And welcome, Ginny. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much, Marika, and thank you all for coming. It was a lovely introduction. Out of Place and Time is my poem. Oh, the grief, if peepers did not sing again in spring, if wood frogs never called, and pollinators, bees and butterflies never came to probe and feed and fly, if flowers were not found to nourish them, and spring was only waiting uselessly to start. The quiet woods would wait for birds that never come, plants that bloom too early or too late, out of pace, out of time and place, bright cardinals never here before, red like blood upon the branch because of what we've done. Spring melt has come too soon, made a puddle in wolf mother's den. Her pups now shiver hypothermic, almost dead, and she in haste must find another place, safe for them to hide until they've grown. Farther north, in Gyrfalcon's tundra range, a peregrine falcon comes screaming in, a predator too fast to flee. Once out of range, it too is out of time and place, and mighty Gyrfalcon now succumbs. The tides, much higher now, pushing far onto the land, once high but inundated now. Sea walls and banks inadequate, salt marshes, once buffers against rising tides, disappear beneath the waves. The storms more frequent, stronger than before. Wildfires, hotter, hungrier. Trees that cannot lift their roots and simply move will slowly disappear. They take their reds, their oranges and golds, will take their sweetness with them when they die among the pines. And in the once frozen north, the polar bear just swims and swims and swims, searching for an iceberg large enough to call a home that fast becomes its grave.
Thank you so much, Ginny. I feel like I was just so immersed in a world in such a short period of time, so thank you for that. That was Ginny Freeman, if you've just joined us. This is Literally Alive, and this evening we're celebrating the poets who are featured in A Dangerous New World, Maine Voices on the Climate Change. Again, that was Ginny Freeman. I've popped her website if you want to learn more about her work into the chat. A reminder that the chat is open. You're welcome to make your screen full screen and close the chat if you find it distracting, but you're also welcome to use it to ask any of our readers questions. We'll be doing a Q&A at the end of the program, but if you are so moved to ask a question now, feel free to do so. Next up, it is a total delight and joy to welcome our next reader, Sophia Berry. Sophia Berry is entering 6th grade in the fall. She just turned 11. Congratulations and happy birthday. That was my editorializing on her bio. She enjoys reading, writing, biking, and kayaking. Sophia, welcome to Literally Alive. Thank you so much for joining us.
This is my poem Arizona Storm from the Climate Change Anthology. It was inspired by a snowfall in Arizona. Arizona Storm. Flying storm on an eastern breeze, desperately, cold fingers reaching, softly, flakes destroying, spinning on cactus and rock and tough, tough bush, when sunny, hot and dry, now cold, desolate and snow-clad. Hare, bobcat and long-legged mouse, once living, breathing, bustling energy, now still, alone, and dead. This is one of my other poems called Necessary Doubts. It was inspired by a snowshoe hare. The snowshoe is a keystone species, and it's also a prey. Necessary Doubts. Important vital prey. Food for everything. Slave to hunger's whim. Be a keystone honey. Translation. Suck it up. This is your life. Did you know a snowshoe hare in times of hunger will turn cannibal? Be a keystone honey. Translation. Eat or be eaten. Snowshoe hares experience ups and downs in population over a cycle of 10 years. Be a keystone honey. Translation. This is our love. A snowshoe hare changes pelts by number of days, not snowfall. Be a keystone or a target. So when snow comes early or late, snowshoe hares suffer. Be a keystone honey. Translation. Lay down and die. Snowshoe hares are perfect creatures like lynx, squirrel, and mink. Be a keystone honey. Translation. Bear others' burdens. Did you know a snowshoe hare's preferred food is roses? Be a keystone honey. Translation. Turn from the black spruce and face the compass rose. Snowshoe hare. Born with eyes open. Bird ready to flee. Be a keystone honey. Translation. This world needs you.
Sophia, thank you so much. I loved reading your poetry in A Dangerous New World, and it's so fabulous to hear it in your own words. It's so great. And that last poem was just, I don't even have words for it. It just was such a great, So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for sharing your work. That was Sophia Berry. She is entering the 6th grade in the fall. She just turned 11, and she is an incredible poet, and I'm so grateful she shared her work with us this evening. Again, you're joining us. This is Literally Alive, a weekly digital platform sharing of writers from the Littoral Books canon of work. My name is Marika, and it is a joy to be with you this evening and to facilitate this reading and discussion. Next up, I am delighted to introduce Erin Covey-Smith, who is our next reader. Erin is an artist, writer, and graphic designer living in Freeport, Maine. Besides A Dangerous New World, her work may be found in the forthcoming Goose River Press. Her first full-length book of poetry, Not Yet Elegies, is due out November 2020. Erin, welcome, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, Marika. I'm going to read two poems tonight. The first one is in the anthology. It's called Unbearable. I could hold your new weight against my chest, feel the down atop the small roundness of your head tickle my chin. I could learn the secret sense you drew from within me. I could teach you all the important things. How to split dandelion stems so they curl magic in a vase of water. How to trace a picture in the air over your bed to ward off bad dreams. How to see worlds in every sidewalk crack, every cornered dust mote. I could teach you to scrape the dregs of the peanut butter jar with a spoonful of honey. I could teach you to love Vermeer as much as I do, by which I mean the light. I could teach you to love running, cooking, gardening, books, anything to give you strength and freedom. You would need it. I could not teach you what quiet used to sound like, robins in the evening. I could not teach you why I was visited by occasional monarchs and you are not. I could not teach you anything but to irredeemably love the world, nor could I teach you why it has to end. The world groans with too much human, but you will remain only light. I have another short one. This is actually not in the anthology. My other anthology piece is about February, and this one felt more seasonally appropriate. It's called June Triad. Rain. The perennial garden says no. Ebullient defiance. No, it won't all collapse, not even the heavy-headed peonies. The taproots won't all wash away. Not yet, not today, not even in all this rain. Solstice. The day fades, subtle and pink, hesitant to relinquish its bright hold, as if inexplicably, not weary. The quiet birds sing sparse, wise lines, as if unplighted, doing what they know. Light. I am called to visit the light, the bird-laced light, the evening light at the top of the stairs, after the rain, the light that falls on the desk which looks out to the garden, where the green light glows, ardent, wild, free.
Erin, thank you so much. Those were such powerful poems. The line about the quiet and not being able to describe it in your first poem just made me think of a conversation that I had with Jacqueline Moore, who is another poet published by Littoral Books, and who spent many years up in Mid-Coast Maine. And the conversation she and I had was just about the light and the light changing and the sound changing in her off-the-grid home over the years. And it was just such a powerful image. And I feel like that was just brought back up for me in your poetry. So thank you so much for sharing. We just heard the work of Erin Covey-Smith, and you are joining us here at Littorally Alive. My name is Marika. Again, you're welcome to engage with the reaction features, the two emojis, the hand clapping or the thumbs up if you'd like to engage, or pop a question or a comment into the chat if you feel comfortable doing so. Again, we'll be joining together and engaging in a Q&A session at the end. So next up, it's a delight and honor to introduce Analyses Yakimedes, whose name we had a conversation earlier as a Marika von der Steenhoven. My apologies if I've mispronounced your name, Annalise, but it is with the utmost respect that I do so forgive me. Annalise is published in journals and anthologies such as Beloit Poetry Journal, the Solstice Literary Magazine, and About Face, as well as broadcast on Maine Public and NPR. Annalise's prose and poetry has been recognized regionally and nationally, most recently as a finalist for the Stephen Dunn Poetry Prize. She lives in Bangor, and again, I'm going to pop her website into the chat so you can learn more about her work there after the program this evening. Annalise, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm honored to be able to read the end of this essay with all of you tonight. So it's the end section of Skimming in 7 Cycles. Lucky us, wildness, silence, natural beauty, maple and birch, ash, aspen, beech, cherry, oak, willow, cedar, coastline, miles, many more miles of coastline, Lubecs and Stoningtons, all of it crashing and splashing, but heating up 99% faster than Nanking's or San Diego's or Watamu's. Our heavenly world swelling, the warmer the water, the more it expands. In 29 years, sea level will have risen 6 inches or 2 feet, chewed up the coast, and my grandchildren, the one of the soccer ball and the one who would spend every day cooking and painting and talking all of it brilliantly, will be 39 and 37. Desperate in our grief is what I started to insert into this story of our evolution, here, now. The 8 Arctic nations, United States, Russia, Canada, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, are silently rushing off, ruthless, unsettled, asleep at the glacial wheel. But I will not label me or them or you, us, with desperation or grief, fear, denial, resistance. We can make mistakes then. My organic ice stream liquors, now 10 and 8, will carry other words in their surprising minds. Our waters have all gone on a walkabout, not of their own volition like a stroll. No intention here. We made it, we fix it. So just listen up. We don't have to drown or end up starting over in the beginning when breath and sound and the jazz licks of Annette Cohn, Kamau, Matthew Whitaker. He's barely started, but fabulous, fragile, and fierce. And come on, we can give him a fucking chance. Didn't exist. Or roads and paintings, museums, movies, ocean liners. I am not a doom talker. I'm a dancer and laugher and hard worker, a saver, a lover, naked and sincere. I'm a listener. I hear larvae and bubbles, rain splatting on the cracked asphalt, tree rings, coral reefs, the glitter of light in the night, gases and carbons and data body data, sedimentary rock layers, wind folding millions of minute adaptations, the puncture of seeds, disease, dis-ease, the rumble of the refrigerator, 413 billion tons of disappeared ice, itching up the sea. Oh, we humans, arrogance and heart, alive to chance, alive, still alive.
Whew. Annalise, thank you so much. You are a powerhouse performer. I just had goosebumps and felt a full range of emotions listening to you read. So thank you so much. Again, we just heard from Annalise Giacomettis. Again, there is a link in the chat to her website for you to learn more about her work. And again, what she just read is featured in A Dangerous New World, Maine Voices on the Climate Change, which is the work that grounds our conversation here this evening. And if you don't have a copy, you absolutely must get one, and must get one for your friends and family, because it is an incredibly powerful work that includes poetry, essays, artwork. It's beautifully designed, and it's a true pleasure to read. So we are down to our final 3 readers before we then move on to questions and answers. So now it is a pleasure for me to introduce Lucia Owen. Lucia, in 1969, moved to Bethel, Maine to begin teaching English at Gould Academy. She wrote professionally for the English Journal, The Writing Teacher, and collaborated with her husband on pre-digital slide sound programs doing both writing and photography. Based on this work, they were elected Fellows of the Royal Society of Great Britain. After retiring and glutting her passion for horses and Tai Chi, she returned to her own writing. She has had work published in the Cafe Review and A Dangerous New World, as we are highlighting this evening. And most recently, she has had her work accepted for this year's Goose River anthology. She lives in Stoneham, a wide place in the road between Norway and the Freiburg Fairgrounds. Lucia, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. I am unmuted. I should be.
You sound fabulous.
Okay, good. Here I go. I'm going to read two poems, both from the anthology. After a Sign in Harbor Fish Market, Portland, Maine. We cannot guarantee the life of lobsters, or of the piping plovers on Old Orchard Beach, or of the little brown bat, the monarch butterfly, the Panamanian golden frog, or the polar bear. We regret that we can no longer support your access to strawberries in January, asparagus from Chile, designer lattes, and 13 choices of toothpaste. We acknowledge your requirements, but we are experiencing technical difficulties. In addition, we find we cannot guarantee that your luggage will arrive when you do, or that your child will get into Harvard, or that the banquet of the world spread out before you will remain your personal picnic. Hard as it is for us to say, and you to hear, we cannot guarantee the life of lobsters. And the second one is Butterfly Crossing Route 118, Norway, Maine. Frail aeronaut, it rides an updraft over a windshield, slides over a roof, is blown down and up, reverse flits across the yellow line, slipstreams under a moving truck, finds the thermal rising from the asphalt, and lands fanning itself on a lilac bloom 50 feet away. The red baron of butterflies, the tiger of swallowtails. The chitinous crickets and horned beetles, the articulated biters, stingers, spinners, and crawlers greet it with wild chirps and chitters, for the rebellion it has begun against the perpetrators of the Anthropocene.
Oh, Lucia, thank you.
You're welcome. I lost my picture. Where am I?
Oh, there you, I see you.
Oh, okay.
That was fabulous. I feel like the first poem should be posted at the entrance of all Hannafords.
Well, I wanted to be in Harbor Fish, actually.
Oh, perfect. Even better. Even better. We'll post it all over.
Right.
That was fabulous. And I also thinking, as you were reading, it made me reflect on, right, where in in the midst of this pandemic and the access to food and what going to the grocery store or access to goods right now means. And it made me experience this poem in a whole new light than when I first read it when the book came out. So thank you, and lovely hearing you read it, of course.
Thank you. Thank you. Mute myself.
Fabulous comments hopping up in the chat too. I like Ginny's comment, go Red Baron. Exactly. All right, so again, you're here with me, Marika, your host for this evening, where we're dedicated to talking about climate change and listening to Maine poets featured in A Dangerous New World. Next up, it is a delight and pleasure to welcome Charlotte Egell. Charlotte is a longtime public school teacher and a prolific author living in Midcoast, Maine. Her last three books are Maybe Tomorrow, published by Scholastic, Mud, Sand, and Snow, published by Islandport Press, and A Field Guide to Gifted Students, published by Prufrock Press. So I'm going to pop Charlotte's website into the chat. There it is. You can save that to peruse her work later. And without further ado, it is a delight. And welcome, Charlotte. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And thanks to all the creative forces behind the book. It's really cool to be in this book with you, everybody. I'm going to read my poem from this book. It's called Grandeur. I want to take you camping. I want the wind to blow your hair around until you do not care that you are not coiffed. I want the bugs to bite you, just a little, or possibly a lot. I want the real sun to hit your face. It will not turn you orange, I don't think. I want you to stand on your own bare feet on the sweet, earthy, wormy dirt of our one precious planet, Earth. I want you to look into the distance at the far mountains and feel grandeur. I want you to let your eyes rest on the horizon and imagine peace. The waves will slap the shore all night long. We might have a campfire. There will be no secret service, only a wandering deer, maybe even a bear. We'll have separate tents. You can have the bigliest. In the morning, you'll get up and yawn broadly and say to the birds, "What have I been thinking all my life?" I won't say a thing. And that's the end of the poem. I wanted to read what I wrote under it because I look back on it now and it all feels so innocent. My commentary today, I don't know if I'd even have written this poem, but I wrote this poem in my head while biking home from Crystal Spring Farm Market near my home in Brunswick. This was a couple of years ago at least. So I stopped to scribble it down. I was thinking about how lucky I was to have a rucksack full of produce from soil so very nearby. It made me wonder about our world leaders, especially one of them, whose name has been redacted from this work. It was originally called Dear, I'm not even going to say it, but that seemed unnecessary, besmirching even. But I do wish, truly, for all of our leaders to feel the soil underneath their bare feet, quite literally, to have the earth speak to them in all senses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Yeah, I think it's an amazing, right? Like the grounding power of actually having your bare feet touch the earth. Yeah. Again, you know, not in an attempt to try to find a silver lining in this horrific moment that we're in with both the global health pandemic, but also the global pandemic surrounding, you know, institutional structural racism. I feel so privileged and grateful that I don't have to do my, I'm still able to work and I don't have to do my 45-minute commute up to your neck of the woods in Brunswick, and that I can step outside into my garden and plant my feet in the ground. And it's an incredible way to start my day. And I feel so grateful for that privilege again. So thank you for sharing that poem and the context in which it was written. Thank you. So right now, we are going to move on to our final reader this evening. Someone who I feel almost doesn't need an introduction, but nevertheless, I will introduce him. Martin Steingesser, I've always felt is just a pillar of Portland, but Martin Steingesser lives in Portland, and he is the author of 3 books of poems, his most recent, Yellow Horses, and I'm going to pop into the chat a link to that work so you can get your own copy. There it is. Martin has also been published in the Sun magazine and American Poetry Review, and I'm delighted that he is grounding our readings here. We've just heard from 7 other readers, and it's just such an honor and a delight to welcome him here to the space. So welcome, Martin, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Marika. I really miss being able to see everybody out there. It's the equivalent when people are in person is when they shine lights in your face and everything is black. So this is a little better because I can see a few of you. Homer Argus is a naturalist from Contepec, Mexico, where the monarch butterflies migrate. And he writes, Once there were rivers of butterflies. Now there are years with none. This is a village of ghosts. The poem in the book that I want to share with you or read for you or tell you is On Eagle Lake. Peel time off the blue air of morning or sunlight off the lake's surface. That's what I did, drifting so easy you could hear pickerel weed brushing the sides of the canoe. The gods are like that sometimes, no credit to me. One moment, oxygen pressed out of my heart. The next, some angel slips a feather of light in my hand. Who knows why? I wanted to be swallowed in this dawn mist, and I don't give a whit. Anyone says finding reasons after the fact is like predicting yesterday's weather. I was meant to save one butterfly, this monarch, an early frost put in my hand. None of the monarch orange and stars over wings and black twig body had paled. In cupped hands, I lifted this ounce of brilliance and breathed over the petal-like wings, breathed and breathed again. I'd like to tell you how I did that for most of the next half hour, occasionally paddling, sometimes breathing over a knee with the monarch, till mist started thinning and sun warmed on my cheek. Wings were trembling now like harp strings. Yes, it flew. I'd like to tell you to that forest in Mexico, they migrate, hundreds of thousands, filling the trees, their wings opening, closing, like small fans. Hundreds of thousands filling the trees, every tree limb filled with monarchs. What I've got, this morning sun, the lake, breathing in my hands. What we've got, this breathing in our hands.
Thank you, Martin. It's always such a pleasure to hear you read and perform, and it's just so grounding. So thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us. Oh, goodness. We have just heard from 8 incredible poets sharing their work on the climate change with us, and I am so grateful for all of you for reading. There's some wonderful comments popping up in the chat, so if you don't have that open, please do so now. With a little bit of time that we have left in the hour, we're going to move now into a Q&A session. So I see here, thank you, Robert, for forwarding me this question. Nancy Walters would like to ask a question. So I'm going to hand it over to Nancy. If you want to unmute yourself and turn your video on, I will just make a note that we are recording. So just so you all know that. And Nancy, please take it away with your question.
Well, my question is to all of you, are you at all concerned that with all of the other pressing events that are troubling our world and our country right now, are you afraid or concerned that people are forgetting about the urgent steps that need to be taken to address climate change, because the focus has been swung in other important directions specifically. And if anyone has anything to say about that.
I'm unmuted. Thank you so much for your question, Nancy. Kathleen, did you have your hand up? Do you want to address that first? Go forth.
Sure, thank you. For March, April, and May, and part of June, I said to myself, I think I'm just a one crisis girl. Because I was really unable during that period of time to, even with all I had done the year before, in an effort to speak and change people's ideas about making some influence on climate change. I could not, during that period of time, think about it. But after I saw the policeman and the face of the policeman on George Floyd's and that whole event, I woke up from where I was, from this very small cocoon that I was in, and I could see that all of this is interconnected. Mm-hmm. This sense of the way in which power is being used, and all of the problems with people, the way the power structure is being is the destruction of the power structure of the fossil fuel companies, the people of color, that it's all the way in which, and I think that we're going to start waking up to that. I became very much more, I'm very excited by all the protests, because I think they're all speaking to the same thing, to the power structure that does not take into consideration the way in which it is destroyed. And I think people are beginning to be fed up with it. So I'm hopeful.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. I want to draw your attention to those who don't have the chat open. Erin Covey-Smith has shared her answer in the chat. But next up, to answer Nancy's question, I'm going to go to Annalise. So Annalise, if you want to unmute yourself.
I think am I unmuted?
You are coming in loud and clear. Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to say that I spoke to this very issue just on Monday night, and the fact that I'm not an authority on anything, but one thing I do know is that we cannot drop crisis 1 for crisis 2 and drop crisis 1 and 2 for crisis 3. They are all an interwoven thread. And what has become very clear to me in looking at this particular book is if you pull out any number of pieces in this book, including the introduction and the afterword, you can see how everything is weaving together. And what I will also say is that the word environmental justice, the movement of environmental justice, has really not gotten any play whatsoever until recently, but all of this is threaded through that needle of environmental justice. So we just have to hold on to all three things and make them move together.
Yes, thank you, Annalise. I think the intersectionality of all of this is so crucial. Martin, I am going to go to you next to answer.
Yeah, I confirm the thought that everything is interrelated, but I think it goes deeper. But to directly answer the way the question was put, I don't think we could talk about everyone. I've been hearing a lot of wonderful voices speaking to something else. On the other hand, those voices, which I will say something about, aren't heard in the big press and by most people. And that's really unfortunate, because the focus seems to be on how do we get rid of coronavirus, and can we get a vaccine? And that's very important and needs to be done. But the connection with climate is not just that they're connected one-to-one, is that I believe, and some of these other voices I've been hearing and articulate so well, is that what we're getting with the virus is what we've done to the earth already. We have harmed and damaged every aspect of life, including the earth herself. And what's happening is the result of our own behavior and activity. And even if, and hopefully soon, we can get through this passage with coronavirus, something else is going to happen. This is not going to change in a short period of time, because we can't undo everything we've done to the earth and to all of every form of life on this earth. And that will take time and effort and dedication, and that's so connected to the climate situation and everything involved with it. So we're in a period when we have to make a major shift in our entire way of viewing life, because we have to begin to realize that the stones, even the stones, have life and have a new sense of our place in relation to the planet.
Absolutely. Thank you. So unfortunately, we have if one of our readers has a comment, if you could pop it in the chat. I want to make sure that we have time to have one more question. So I see you, Ginny, and I'm sorry that I just want to get one more question in. We might run a little bit over, so I hope you're all able to stay with us. Stephanie Hagopian Berry has a question. So Stephanie, if you want to unmute, feel free to share your video if you want, or just let us hear your voice and ask your question.
I'm doing video.
Yeah.
This will allow Jenny to respond as well, because it's sort of just following up on what's already being discussed. But I was curious from any of the authors, there's kind of a great irony to this connectivity in all the things happening in this world, because the pandemic, ironically, is also contributing to a improvement in climate. You've heard, I don't know if folks have heard, but in LA, smog has been lifted because people aren't commuting every day. Airplanes are the worst when it comes to air pollution, carbon monoxide, and all of that has decreased tremendously as a result of the pandemic. And I'm just curious, has anyone written about that? Or do you have thoughts about, I think it's a very ironic concept that something so horrible and negative, i.e. pandemic, is also creating a really interesting, positive climate change in some respects, at least temporarily in our world.
Stephanie, thank you so much for that question. It's so great. I actually just noticed I'm in the path line for the Portland Jetport, and it's recently, I was like, oh boy, here we go. There's planes flying overhead again. It's wild, because for months it was totally quiet. Does one of our authors want to jump in on this? Charlotte.
Well, I just wanted hi. I just wanted to say thank you for that, because I think that one thing that keeps me getting up in the morning and drinking coffee is the whole concept of noticing and the whole concept of hope, because all these things are true and all these things are dire, but you have to have noticing and hope, and it gives us a reason to use our art, to use our words to contribute to the dialogue. So thanks everybody for what you do.
I do want to point, Ginny put some fabulous comments into the chat, so please be sure to read those if you haven't yet. And Kathleen, I saw your hand up, and perhaps that'll be our last comment for the evening before we wrapped up. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Well, at the same time as all of these pollutions have gone down, we have just this month reached more parts per million than at any time in the last 3 million years. So that pollution is continuing to go up. So on the one hand, I agree with Charlotte that we can have some sense of hope from this. But on the other hand, I think we have to be very careful not to trick ourselves. Because that's not an institutional change. Maybe that will encourage people to think about what they'd like, but it hasn't, in the long run, it's nothing. That's a negative thing to end on, but I think we have to be very careful.
It's such an important thing to end on. And one of the things that I so value about A Dangerous New World is that we get to hear all of these incredible voices and see all of this art and all of this reflection in so many different voices about this issue. And then I'm holding this up. I don't think you can see this. And then we end with an action plan and a list of suggested actions. And I think that that's so important, right? We could obviously go on and have a very incredible and profound conversation about this. And that is so important to do. And it's so important for all of us to take this and move forward and talk to our loved ones and continue to have this conversation, right? But one of the things that I wanted to point out I'm not going to go through the entirety of the action list, but one of the things that I want to bring your attention to is the very first bullet point under suggested action list is vote for and support candidates with bold climate action plans at every level, local, state, and national. Personally, I just filled out my absentee ballot today. I have 2 stamps on it, and I'm going to put it out for the postal worker to pick up. Thank goodness for the U.S. Postal Service. Yeah, so keep that in mind. Research your candidates and research them on all levels, right? It's all, as we were just hearing so eloquently put by our readers tonight, it is all interconnected. These issues of systemic racism, anti-Black racism, education, the climate, they're all intersected, and we need to do our best to get elected officials at all levels into office. So remember to vote. Thank you all so much. Oh my goodness. I want to thank each and every one of our readers this evening. It has been such a privilege to share space with you, and I am so grateful for the work that you've shared with us. It has taken me personally on such a journey, and I'm so grateful for that. I also want to thank the incomparable Robert Diamante for being our tech support and producer. He has in the chats been saying, okay, next go to this question, and he's just fabulous and such a delight to work with, so thank you. And a huge shout out to Meghan Sterling, who is again co-editor of A Dangerous New World, but also organized this reading this evening, so thank you so much, Meghan. And of course, to Jim and Agnes Buchel for their visionary work at Littoral Books. I'm grateful to both of them for continuing to ask me to participate. It's such an honor. And thanks to each of you for joining us. And I know that in this time of Zoom being our primary source of social interactions, that screen fatigue is real. So thank you so much for making the time to be with us this evening. I hope you will mark your calendars and join us next week where we're going to be celebrating the work of Catherine Berry and her new book, Masked Year. And I know she's been busily writing new poetry in this moment, so hopefully we'll be able to hear some of that. That's next Wednesday, July 8th. How is it already July? At 7 p.m. You'll find more information about that at the Littoral Books website. So thanks to each of you for joining us this evening, and I wish you well, be healthy, and let's continue this fight against the climate crisis. Thank you.
Nancy, are you there? Yeah, I can't do that. I gotta go leave, I guess. Boom, leave me.